guys, it's Miss Hofeld. I am back to read a little bit more of You Go First by Erin and Entrada Kelly. Today we're going to start with Life According to Ben Part 6, so we're making some good progress. And then we'll read a chapter also from Charlotte's perspective, so we'll read 2 chapters today. Sorry I missed you guys yesterday. We are on spring break in our school district if you're an Edison student, and I've been using the time to get outside a little bit more, to try and have some fun, to try to relax. So I might do a video every other day unless I can get back on track doing one every day. But this week I'm trying to also relax a little bit before we get into our e-learning next week. So my hope is to read to you still, but maybe also take a break for myself. We're going to go ahead and get started with Life According to Ben, Part 6. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. So said Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Ben had pumped himself up by the time 6th period advanced English rolled around. He was skilled at it. His father had taught him that half of life was attitude. You may have smarts, his father had said, but if you don't have the right attitude, nothing else matters. Ben wondered what his father's attitude was toward his mom, now that they were devolving. What was his father's attitude toward him? Oh, well, that may have mattered yesterday, but it didn't matter now. Today, he had something more important to think about. Yes, he'd been more than slightly, defeated in the lunchroom, but success didn't come easy to anyone. Take Darwin's finches in the Galapagos. Their beaks changed with the ecosystem. They didn't just shrug it off. They didn't just shrug and say, oh, well, some finch in the baseball cap made fun of my beak, so I'll just go extinct now and forget about survival. The finch straightened its feathers and said, I will sharpen my beak and change the world of science forever. Ben needed to do something bold like that. Something to go down in the history books. The courage swelled inside him. Increasing levels of determination fired through his brain as Miss Abelard stood in front of the smartboard, providing literary definitions that he already knew. His knee, trying to contain all the unfettered enthusiasm of a man with a plan, bobbed up and down, and before he could stop himself, he sprang from his seat and stood next to his desk. The movement was so sudden that the chair scraped against the floor, and everyone, including Miss Abelard, turned toward him. Ben realized he was holding his pencil, so he used it to tap the top of his desk. Miss Abelard, I'd like to make a brief announcement if I could, he said. He could hardly stand still. He bounced up and down on his toes. Miss Abelard raised her eyebrows. She was still pointing to the definition for story arc. Do you need to use the restroom, she asked. John, Dan, and Eddie, the boys who sat around him, snickered. No, ma'am, Ben said. I just want to make a brief announcement regarding my candidacy for student council office. Oh, Miss Abelard said, her eyes darted around the classroom. Well, it'll only take a moment, Ben said quickly, I promise. Another chair scraped against the floor. Miss Abelard, this is an unfair advantage, said Sherry Bertrand. Ugh, how could he have forgotten she was in this class? Maybe because he never knew in the first place. Now that he thought about it, he never spent much time noticing any of the other kids. He typically kept his eyes ahead, listening to the lecture, taking notes, disappearing into his mind, which operated with much more finesse than the minds of other 11-year-olds. What else had he missed? If Ben Boxer gets to make a totally random speech to the class, then I should make a speech too, said Sherry. Sherry crossed her arms and smirked. Ben studied her face. Her lips were pale pink and shiny. She was dressed like a mannequin at the mall. Ben cleared his throat and turned to the teacher. She's right. It's only fair. Miss Abelard waved her dry erase marker in the air. I don't think this is the place for anyone to... Ben turned to Sherry. You can go first, he said. Sherry shook her head. Her ponytail flopped from one shoulder to the other. You go first, Ben Boxer. By all means, be my guest. She sat down in her chair delicately. The girl in front of her, also dressed like a mall mannequin, leaned over and whispered something, and they giggled. The boy behind her, Derek What's-His-Name, gave her a thumbs up. No one was giving Ben a thumbs up. No matter. Ben cleared his throat a second time. I want to go to work for you. He swept an open hand around the room. You're always supposed to use hand gestures when you speak. He read that somewhere. Each and every one of you, he pointed to specific people, John, Dan, Jeffrey, Lori, Eddie, even Derek What's-His-Name. To do that, you must first elect me to student council. He pointed to himself. No one had moved a single muscle, not even Mrs. Abelard. Were they listening, or... I want to know what you think about Lannister Middle School and its student body. I want to hear, he cupped his ear, from you. He pointed to the class again. Thank you. The room was completely silent. He straightened his desk before he sat down. His classmates stared at him a moment longer before turning back to Miss Abelard in slow motion. Miss Abelard said, Thank you, Ben. She pointed at Sherry with the marker. Sherry, do you want to say anything? Quickly. Now they all turned to Sherry, who grinned. On second thought, Miss Abelard, I think I'll just save the big speech for Friday. A wave of quiet snickers brushed over the classroom. Ben's ears thrummed. They'd been listening, right? The snickers were for Sherry, weren't they? You're evolving, Ben Boxer. You're a Finch. The next chapter is Probably Not. Rabbit hole. Earthquakes occur when the Earth's tectonic plates reach their maximum amount of stress following gradual friction. A rupture occurs, creating the quake. Earthquakes happen all the time all over the world, but you can't feel any of them. Charlotte was in life sciences, staring blankly at Miss Schneider. And for the first time in days, she wasn't thinking about her father. She wasn't imagining tubes coming out of his nose or IVs dangling from his arm. She also wasn't thinking about the scientific theories projected on the whiteboard. She was thinking about a rabbit hole she had climbed into once, when she'd first learned about silent earthquakes. Scientists call them slow slips or episodic tremors. You can't feel them. There's no rumbling under your feet. Plates don't shatter on the floor. Reds, art club, it felt like a slow slip. Charlotte told herself, so what? Charlotte thought, what's the big deal? But she was waiting for a rumble, a crash, an explosion. Earth to Charlotte Locknerd. Wipe up your drool and pass the paper. That was Tori Beraldi, who sat next to her. She waved a stack of papers in Charlotte's face. Charlotte took a paper, passed the rest on, and discovered with horror that it was a pop quiz. 1. Give a one-word meaning of echino when used in the following context. A sea star is an echinoderm. 2. Describe the function of the radial nerve in a sea star. 3. What are the functions of the ampulla? Charlotte chewed her pencil and imagined a different scenario, one where she went to Red's with Bridget and Sophie. She pictured the three of them sitting at a table with plain cheese slices because for some reason girls never ordered toppings at Red's. They were talking about what? Art? Van Gogh? After Mr. Lockard told Bridget about Van Gogh that day, the day he gave them $20, even though they never dedicated a slice to him, Bridget had started reading about all kinds of post-impressionist stuff. Now, she considered herself an expert. That's why she wanted to see the sunflowers at the museum. She said Van Gogh was a genius. That's probably what she and Sophie talked about in art class. Oh, Van Gogh, isn't he a genius? Bridget would say. Oh my God, you're so right, Sophie would reply. Not only that, but Picasso is so overrated. Charlotte practiced her imaginary response. Did you know Oasis is a scramble of Pablo Picasso? And non-teaching is a scramble of Vincent van Gogh? Interesting, right? Even in her imagination, the faces were blank. The day Mr. Lockard told them about Van Gogh was the last time they'd wished on Sphinx. It was the last time they'd gone to Red's. It was the last time Charlotte heard her father talk about art. She wrote prickily for the first quiz response and took her mind to that day when she'd said he was embarrassing. even though that wasn't what she meant, not really. And she imagined that instead of going to Red's with Bridget, where they'd sat awkwardly and pretended they belonged there, she'd ask her father more questions. Why did Van Gogh cut off his ear? Why didn't he just paint things the way they appear? Why did the paintings look like they were in a dream? Was it a mistake, or did he want to paint that way? Charlotte knew that all of a starfish's sensory information and memory went to its radial nerve, but her eyes were blurry, and a fat tear fell right where the answer should have been. It soaked through the page, a perfect circle. Charlotte pressed the heels of her hand against her eyes to push the tears back inside. She sniffled. If anyone asked, she would say she had allergies. Hey, Charlie, is everything okay? Yeah, sure, just allergies. But no one asked. All right, that's the end of our chapter, and I noticed as I read a little bit that there were some things that started to come up again that have happened already in the story. Maybe some themes, maybe even some phrases that were used. One of them was Charlotte just talking about her teary eyes being allergies. I remember that was referenced in the very beginning of the book when her mom and her were at the hospital, and her mom was feeling kind of sad and sniffly, and when Charlotte looked at her, her mom said, "Oh, it's just allergies." But really, they were both teary-eyed and crying. So I'm wondering if you guys have noticed any patterns, either within the book or about our characters, things that you've started to notice they do often or a way they think. You can add that down below in the comments. Also, I still want to keep hearing what you're doing over spring break. I still want to hear how you're doing overall, so feel free to put that in the comments too. It doesn't just have to be about the book this week since we are on spring break. So make sure you comment, let me know that you're listening, let me know how your break is going, and I will get another video posted for you guys hopefully tomorrow. All right, guys, I'll see you later. Thanks for listening. Bye.